get started here. Angie, you want to do a roll call?
Do roll call. Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
Commissioner Bunting.
Present.
Commissioner Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Owens.
Here.
Commissioner Flynn.
Here. Don't you give the invocation?
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day that you've given to us and the blessings in it. And we just pray, Father, you'll be with us tonight as we deliberate for the people of Gratiot County. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands,
One nation
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
justice for all.
Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Approval of the agenda.
We're good.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Public comment. Any public comment? Anybody online, Matt?
Nope, we don't have anybody connected in that wants to make public comment tonight.
Okay. In the consideration of the consent calendar. Anything you want pulled there to discuss?
Move the consent calendar.
Support. Moving the supporters to approve this consent calendar, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Commissioners Committee report. George?
Attended the Breckenridge board meeting. Attended the health department meeting held over in Stanton. And that's about it.
Tim, how about you? Been any?
Well, I also attended the health department. And they gotta figure out. Which one back in St. John's.
They meet, yeah, just
You're right down by the jail, right off of
jail.
jail.
Yeah, you go to the light just south of St. John's, that last light before you get to B's Auto and all that, that light. Turn left at that light.
The corner.
It's down there about a half a mile on the left-hand side where the jail's at.
Jan?
Yes, I went to the township meeting out at Pine River. And I've also been at two meetings with Michigan Works, one in Saginaw and one in Midland. And I've also been to a meeting just last week here at the courthouse for GIS. And I guess that's about it.
Yeah.
I went to a special meeting in Xville Township, and also I went to the Northern Michigan Counties Association yesterday in Gaylord.
We have a special meeting out in Seville for.
God only knows.
I attended the Fulton Township meeting before I left. Really not a lot going on there. They're concerned about solar now coming. They've got the wind kind of turned down and that's really about it. Any consideration for new business at all?
I have a question about the solar. It seems like the last 2 weeks we haven't had any sun. Does that still work with no sun?
Yes,
I think they still pay it.
yes. You get 80%, about 80%. With regardless, if it's daylight out, they'll produce power, just not as much. Yeah. But of course, they've already did all sorts of scientific experiments and everything else, and then they're satisfied with they can make enough power, so.
Well, I think the biggest thing with solar in all this energy with windmills and everything else, it's the federal government said consumers and DTE got to be so much, non-coal energy by a certain time of the year, a certain time.
And these new solar panels are 40% more efficient than the old.
Yeah.
So. And then another 10 years, they'll be more efficient, so they'll figure it out.
Wouldn't it be easier for people just to put solar panels like in their, like you go to Germany, they have it in their roofs and.
That's government supplied though. It's not the people didn't put it up there, the government put it out for
Uh-huh.
them. It's not cost effective. Some people do it, but it's really not cost effective.
I was surprised because
It's so
going
expensive.
to Germany a couple of years ago, there was very few wind turbines. I didn't see hardly any. And I saw very few solar panels, and they're kind of a big motor of it.
Well, as most of you know, we are looking for a new administrator. Mr. Frank Walsh is here from, I think it's Johnson Associates. And I think he has some stuff prepared. Yep, the people could hear online.
Thank you. Yes, I am Frank Walsh and thank you for the opportunity to serve you in this capacity as we search for a new administrator. It's a very difficult recruitment world out there. There are actually more openings in Michigan than I've seen in a long time. And we're going at this at a salary level, whether we all agree or not. I can tell you what the market is, and the market is substantially higher than the salary level that I was provided. But we're out there with the salary level, and I think it's 84 to 105 or 101 is the salary level that I was provided by the county. That's probably about, whether you agree or not, I can just tell you market wise out there in Michigan, it's approximately about 20 or 25% less than what the market is right now. But what we've talked about, I've talked to the chairman and we've talked about, let's go through the process and see where we're at. We're already into our third week of the process. My goal at the end of this, the deadline is February 17th. It's a week from Friday. And my goal is to have 3 or 4 candidates to bring to you at the salary that we've listed. We have advertised in the several social media outlets, the Michigan Municipal League, and we actually paid a premium to put it at the top of the list of if you go to the Michigan Municipal League, scroll down to the openings, it'll take you a while because there's a lot of openings, but we put this at the top. We've also published the ad in the Michigan Association of Counties on their website as well. And then if you may recall, we talked about in our proposal that we put together a 1-page little profile of Gratiot County. Well, that's easier to do, but we got so much information. We went to a bunch of sources, and we got a bunch of information about the county. So we decided just to put together the full proposal, even though we didn't quote that for you. So I have the full proposal here, the community profile.
Thank you.
This is what we're using to go out and get candidates. If I leave you with anything, if you remember anything from this conversation tonight, I hope you remember this. That I was given the task of 84 to 101, a master's degree and 6 years county experience. Well, that's never going to happen. Because if you have 6 years of county experience at this level, and you have a master's degree, you're making well north of 101. You're up in the 130 range. So what we've got to do is find candidates who are ready for that next step, but haven't taken that step. So one of the last things that I would encourage you to look for is experience, because people with experience right now are going to be kind of, I hate to say it, but out of our league. So I want to be, when I look at this and I look at where we're going to be, I can almost assure you that the candidate for this job will come within, put a dot on Ithaca, and then go out 30 or 35 miles and do a circle. And the candidate will come from that circle. One other thing, here's the real challenge we're having in recruiting right now. We're going to say we have somebody who's down in St. Joe area or Niles down in Southwest Michigan, right? Or Kalamazoo, take your pick. And they have family here in Gratiot County, and the salaries, we'll move here for that, right? Oh, wait a second. I'm paying, and this is what's happened with our economy right now. I'm paying 2.7% on my home for interest, right? And if I move and buy a house somewhere else, I'm paying 7.5. That's an extra $600 or $700 a month on my mortgage. That's also greatly impacting people relocating. So what I'm doing is I'm not trying to pie in the sky here. I'm being realistic. Draw a circle from Ithaca, 35 miles out. Look for people, not so much maybe with experience, although I have 3 candidates that have some county experience. So we're in a good position that I think right now, but here's what I would focus on. I would focus on and this is what I do in my organization that I manage, and I have been managing for 30 years in Michigan, and I always do the same thing. I focus on the personality. I can teach, someone can learn the job, but I can't teach them to get along with people. Focus on something when you interview these candidates, and this is what I'm looking for when I'm talking to candidates. County experience is great, but I've been doing this for 30 some years, and I sure as heck, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm a C student who just tries to treat people well. Focus on when you meet these candidates, focus on someone who's going to get along with you, who's going to get along with the elected sheriff, the elected county clerk, the elected register, all of that. If you find somebody who has some relevant county experience, whatever that is, they could have been a county commissioner for 10 years. They understand county government. That's what we're looking for. What I'm not looking for are people who have a razor edge attitude about them, who can't get along in where they work. I'm looking for people who have that pleasant personality. If you know how to treat people, you can be a county administrator. And that's the focus. So the deadline's the 17th. I have 3 candidates that I'm talking to right now. They know the salary wage, and they're very interested. They're within a 35-mile circle of Ithaca.
Is one of them in St. John's?
Well, I can tell you that the candidates that's a great question. Under the Michigan Open Meetings Act, when candidates request confidentiality, I can't share anything about them until you meet them and you see them. And I'll go through all the confidentiality stuff, not tonight with you, but when I meet with you to go over the candidates, I'll go over that. But they're within 35 miles of here. And all of them have some relevant county experience.
I have 2 people that are interested and asked me how to go about it, so I will give them this address here. One was from St. John's.
Okay. Yeah, so
They found it already.
yeah, so all my contact information is on this. This is on the MML site. This is on LinkedIn. This is on Indeed. This is on the MAC website. It's all over the place. We're doing everything we can to, but we only have about 10 days left in the recruitment. What happens after the deadline? And I don't want to take up a lot of your time tonight, so I'll finish up. After the deadline of the 17th, I put together the pool of 3 or 4 candidates. I come up here and I meet you in a closed session. We're allowed to go into some closed session under the law as long as the candidates have requested confidentiality. If they don't, we can't talk about them in closed session. The candidates I bring you will have requested confidentiality. We'll meet, you decide if you want to interview these candidates, you come out, you come into open session and you name the number of candidates. At that time, you don't release any information. We don't release it until they accept the interview. Once they've accepted the interview, and once you come out of that closed session, everything else from that point forward is public. You can no longer have closed sessions about the entire process. Even your selection has to be all done in public. So from February 17th, about a week or 10 days later, and we'll set some dates here as we move forward. Within 7 to 10 days, and I would not wait too long because of the market that's out there, we would meet and you would select your candidates and we would establish an interview date at that time. Then we have interviews, there's reference checks and all of that we do for you. And we just keep handing you all the information. You make the decisions, we move forward. My guess is that February 17th deadline, within 3 to 4 weeks, you have your administrator chosen. So by St. Patrick's Day, if you don't have your administrator named by St. Patrick's Day, the train went off the tracks. That's where we're headed right now. So about 6 more weeks, you'll have your administrator named.
Wouldn't necessarily have to live in the county.
No, as a matter of fact,
Against the law.
most people don't know that. And if you go back to a Supreme Court case in 2000, 23 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that residency cannot be a condition of employment. So we don't even talk about it in the interviews, because if we bring it up, then they can claim it was
Because they didn't get the job.
Yeah. But I can tell you, all 3 of these candidates are positioned well around the Ithaca area, Gratiot County area. None of these candidates are outside of 20 to 25 minutes from the county. So given all the circumstances of the really rough environment out there, all the Michigan openings and our salary level, I'm really happy where we're at with the three candidates. We've got to keep them all interested and keep them engaged, and we might pick up a fourth here in the next 10 days. But I'm confident on this, when we meet after the 17th, we'll have 4 candidates to interview.
Who set that deadline? February 17th, no more applications?
Yeah, your typical recruitment period is 1 month. And so we started shortly after your meeting that you had where we made the selection. I worked with Tracy, got a bunch of information. I worked with Gratiot Development Corporation, Jim and Casey, got some more information, put together the profile, had it reviewed by Tracy. And so we started a couple weeks ago because we want to start and get ahead of all the openings that are coming up. And I won't go through the list with you, but there's so many of them. Now, after the 17th, if you're not happy and you want to raise the salary level and go back out, you can. But I'm confident that one of these 3 candidates will be your administrator. And I can't even guarantee you by raising the salary that you're going to get a different level of candidates. Because I'm just realistic and I don't come here to try to tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to know. And we're not going to get somebody from Grand Rapids or 3 hours away, come here, relocate, buy a house, take a big hit on their house for where we're at on salary. Just doesn't happen. So that's why I've got to recruit in this region.
So you're saying attitude is more important than like knowledge or experience or?
Find somebody who understands a little bit about county. I'm not saying pick somebody off the street, but if they have a general knowledge, if I'm a county commissioner for say, you've been on a county commissioner for 10 years, you understand jail operations, you understand how you have to work with a sheriff, you understand the clerk's role, you know all that. Get someone who isn't fighting with the sheriff or fighting with the clerk every other day, and you've got a victory. Because so many times people come in and they don't understand county government. They're from a city or a village where the police chief or clerk work for me. And when I tell the police chief, I want you to do this, they do it. County government, totally different. They're all elected. That's why, especially in a county government situation, you've got to focus on that ability to get along with people. And that's why when it comes to counties, I vet people really closely on how well they get along with other people. And I check all that out.
Now, these 3 people approach you. You didn't approach them. You put out the advertisement and then you got the interest.
No, I'm approaching people all the time.
You approached them.
2 of the 3 I did. 2 of the 3 I
asked you a
rejected.
question how interested they are in this. If
They show up, they're
you chase them.
I didn't chase them. I just do what I do. I recruit, tell them about the job, all the situations. They're totally interested. And I'm not saying that one of the candidates wouldn't have applied if I wouldn't have contacted them, but my job is to reach. I get turned down so many times. I mean, I go to candidates, I get turned down 8 out of 10 times.
Or turned down for the job you're.
Turned down that they don't, no, that's not where I want to go. They don't apply. They turn me down. They don't accept but once in a while.
Like a telemarketer, aren't you?
I'm out there representing Gratiot County, trying to get you the best candidates I can. And I don't get that if I sit home in my lazy boy, not making phone calls and sending out emails.
And you got to track probably who's looking or whatever. Probably somebody would call you and say, you give it time. I'm looking. And here's what's really difficult. There are 1,290 townships in Michigan. There are 570 villages and cities. There are 83 counties. And a number of those 83 counties don't have an administrator. So it's much more difficult to recruit for a county position than it is because there's so much other experience in all the other areas. So when I look and recruit, this one's a difficult one because I check off people who have absolutely no county experience. I try to find people who at least understand the dynamics of a county.
Also, do you have a business card?
I don't, but all my information is right on the back of this sheet. And the last page, you'll find all my information.
One thing I like about the brochure that you did put out is, when you talk about it, I never given much thought about the county's finances, that it's not a situation where our administrator is leaving because there's lots of problems, there's lots of struggles. Really, we're in pretty good shape, and I really think that's gotta be a plus for somebody looking at that and saying, I don't have to go to fix something, I don't have to, you know, try to appease a bunch of people to get along or whatever. I mean, it's. I think that was a great thing to have in here.
Yeah, and my website is also on there. If you want to get on my website, all the information's on there as well. So I'll leave that with you. So the next thing will be, I'll be contacting you after the 17th. And I'll be saying, here's where we have 3, 4, or 5 people I want to bring to you. We'll meet within a week or two of that, whenever we can set a date, closed session. You'll review their resumes and decide who you want to interview. Then go out and invite them in on a certain date. I do all the reference checks. I bring them to you. You interview them. That's the process from here on out. Keep in mind, by March 17th, we should have named an administrator.
What, are you out of where?
Where am I out of?
Yeah, where's your business at?
Okemos.
Okemos?
You said some counties don't have an administrator.
Right.
How many did you say?
I don't know the number, but a lot of rural counties, as you go north, the number continues to dwindle. I would guess my guess would be 50 to 55, maybe 60 have administrators out of the 83. That's just a guess. I'm not
You or don't?
do.
Do.
Yeah, I'd say 70% would have administrators would be my guess.
No. When you take like up in the UP, they probably have one administrator for maybe 3 or 4 counties.
Yeah, I'm not.
Pretty there.
So that's where we're at. I feel good about where we're at. But we got to finish strong. And focus on that personality. Hire somebody that people want to be around.
I'm looking at our next meeting is on the 21st, 2 weeks from today.
Oh, okay.
I'll try to meet maybe sometime after that, and we can talk about it later.
Yeah.
To see would you have a special meeting? Would you want to meet on one of our meeting days?
Whatever works for you. On the 21st, if I did it, I'd have to do it right at 4:30 with a close set. Do you do it at 4:30 every time?
Sorry.
Okay. I'd have to, if I did on the 21st, which we could do to make it convenient for you, I could be here from 4:30 to about 5:15. And it won't take you more than a half hour. So if we did it right at 4:30, started with a closed session, that date would work.
If we had it early, we had
can do that.
it early. Could you do early?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I can post it
You can
earlier.
post it, we would start at 4, or like we started 4 next week and write a session about this and then just start it afterwards.
Okay, what's the date on that?
It'd be the 21st is our next meeting date.
Yeah.
Question. I'll be.
Right at 4:30.
I couldn't zoom.
Well, I'm thinking if we started at
That's.
4?
Wow.
Would that work for you?
Or something.
I mean, if we can go right into, we can start the meeting with that session,
You have email and stuff now.
and when we're done, right out and we have enough time.
I started at 4 o'clock the next.
Could you,
And maybe share your with me ahead of time.
Yeah.
would that work for you?
Because Zoom gets a little technical with a
Well,
while.
that's why I asked.
Yeah, I'll send them to you ahead of time.
I plan on being in on the live part of the meeting.
Okay.
So the early starts for,
We would go right in, we would start the meeting, we'd go right into closed session.
That's February. Are you gonna be able to be here, George?
I won't be here. I will be in Florida.
Could Zoom in.
Well, we're gonna try to, we'll figure out.
Any other questions for me?
Let's try to, we'll arrange it so we can get it published and start at 4.
Okay, that's great because then the deadline's the 17th and by the 21st you have your candidates and then that night you'll select your interview date that night, whatever works for all of you, so you can all be present. And we'll be rolling it. All right, so my job is to go out and find a couple of more candidates that have some county experience and they have a good reputation.
you got some kind of list.
Can't give you that.
You can't give me that.
On a list of people, but this is the brochure that he hands out right here.
I need to go home.
Good evening. Sorry about that. We're having some audio issues on my end here, but I have three main topics that I wanted to present tonight to the Board of Commissioners. One, I wanted to give you an update on our rural broadband initiative. I also wanted to talk about two of our capital improvement projects. So I'm going to start off with the rural broadband update. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so back in August, the Board of Commissioners selected Wideband Group as the project advisor for this. And then in September, you all chose a community advisory group to kind of direct this initiative. And then that group met in October, November, and December. And then county leadership met in late December to kind of guide the project a little bit too. At the beginning of this year, the county issued a press release asking citizens to challenge FCC maps that talk about where broadband is available in Gratiot County. And I'll dive into what those maps mean in a little bit here. But there's two main funding opportunities that our project advisor has been kind of discussing. One is the Robin Grant program, and then one is BEAD funding. The Robin Grant is a state of Michigan program. It's administered by the State of Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, and the main drive of this is to provide funds to internet service providers so that they can expand broadband service to unserved areas in rural places. The application window for this initiative closes in March, and then awards are going to be made in July of 2023. So with this Robin program that's kind of managed by the state of Michigan, basically ISPs apply for the funds directly. Local government can get involved if in areas where ISPs aren't applying for funds directly, and they can do this via public-private partnerships. And these partnerships are created through a competitive bid process. Applicants to the Robin program, they're expected to provide some type of local match. So the local area or the ISP, they have to contribute to the program. And what they have to build out is a network that's capable of serving 100 by 100 megabit per second speeds. In order to be eligible for funding, you have to apply for a grant in an area to serve an area that's considered unserved by 100 by 20 megabit per second speed internet speeds. So that's kind of the main driver. If you're in an area that's served by these speeds already, you're not allowed to apply for funding in the Robin grant program. And also, if a network's going to go live within the next year that can hit those speeds, that makes the area ineligible as well. And if the area has already received federal or state funding to build a network of those speeds, those areas are ineligible as well. So the state, there's two main mapping websites that are helping the state determine whether an area is served or not. There's maps that have been published by the FCC, and then there's maps that have been published by the state of Michigan of likely eligible areas. So these FCC maps, they're the data that's being used to build these maps is actually coming from the ISPs. They have to file with the FCC twice a year to let the FCC know which areas they serve, the speeds that they can serve people that live in those areas, and then what technologies they're using to serve those areas. If there's inaccuracies found on the maps, then the FCC, or sorry, then citizens can actually challenge the FCC website individually at their own addresses. Now, governments and other groups can, they can perform bulk challenges with the FCC on behalf of citizens, but it's a pretty onerous process. And you have to hit very specific criteria and provide very specific justifications as to why you're challenging the maps. And then, like I said before, the second map that they're using to determine eligibility is a state of Michigan built map. But this map actually uses the FCC data kind of as a base. And then what the state of Michigan has done is they've actually sent people out to public access roads to map out broadband infrastructure, and they've added that data into their maps. So their map is a little bit more accurate because they've actually sent boots out on the ground to evaluate certain areas. With the state of Michigan map, there's not really a formal challenge process like there is with the FCC map. But if somebody notices an inaccuracy on that map, they can reach out to the state of Michigan, my high office, and get those things corrected. So this is what this is what Gratiot County looks like when you pull Gratiot County up on the FCC map. It shows that nearly 100% of the counties served by broadband at speeds of 100 by 20. But what we know is that anecdotal evidence shows that this map isn't really that accurate. There's areas in Gratiot County that aren't offered service at those speeds. So we've actually gone to local ISP websites and kind of spot checked random addresses to see if it shows that the ISPs are actually serving where they say they're serving. And what we found is with at least one local ISP, they're not actually, they tell the FCC that they're offering those speeds, but when you go to their website, they're not actually offering those speeds to customers in a lot of our areas. So like I said, the blue part on this map are areas that are considered served by broadband and therefore ineligible for Robin funding. This is the state of Michigan made up map, and on this map, it's displayed a little bit differently. The dots actually represent the areas that are eligible, likely eligible for Robin funding. And as you can see, Gratiot County doesn't have very many of those dots on it. There's some dots up in the northeast section of the county, and then some that kind of border the east and southeast kind of corners of the county. And the reason that this map doesn't show that there's very many eligible locations is because it's based on that FCC data and FCC map that we think is pretty inaccurate based on what we've discovered anecdotally. So it kind of puts us in a weird predicament because we know that we need broadband and that people aren't being served by broadband, but it makes it difficult for people to apply for funding here, at least through this program, because if you look at the maps, it looks like everybody's already being served and that the county is not eligible for funding. The state of Michigan has said they're encouraging anybody who believes that they're eligible for funding to apply regardless of what the maps show. But the ISPs see this as a big risk. They have to invest resources and time and effort into building out projects and applying for the grants. So when they see that Gratiot County doesn't have very many likely eligible places, it kind of makes them not interested in applying for funds in this area because they feel like they won't be awarded the Robin grant funds. If an ISP does choose to apply, even though it looks like these areas aren't eligible, the incumbent ISPs, the ones that are already doing business in Gratiot County and say that they can serve at those speeds, they can actually challenge the grant application, which means that the applicant wouldn't be awarded the grant. But the incumbent ISP, they have to prove that they can actually serve citizens at those speeds. And if they go to challenge somebody's grant application and it's kind of it's uncertain whether they can serve or can't serve, the state of Michigan has said that they would send boots on the ground to actually assess whether a incumbent ISP can actually serve those speeds. And then if nobody challenges, the state would probably award the grant applicant, or sorry, award the funds to the applicant if they meet all the other criteria and if there's enough money to go around based on the scoring. So that's kind of a general overview of the Robin grant application. What I wanted to do now is provide the board with a kind of a brief overview of some of the different local ISPs that we've spoken with. Point Broadband, Homeworks Tri-County, Frontier, CMS, and then Chaplin Telephone Company. So the Broadband Community Work Group, we met with Point Broadband. They used to go as Casair. Point Broadband actually purchased Casair, so that's why that name's changed within the last year or so. But they've been busy building out fiber in Alma, Ithaca, and St. Louis. They claim to serve the rest of the county through unlicensed fixed wireless. It's a wireless style internet, not a fiber or wired internet. So they claim that they serve most of the county with 100 by 20 already. So they really aren't interested in applying for Robin funding because they already consider our area served. And like I said before, we've spot checked their website. In many locations, they actually don't serve citizens at those speeds. And that's why we're encouraging citizens to file challenges on the FCC maps. But they have committed to improving their fixed wireless network in the upcoming year. They're doing a lot of equipment swaps right now. So they may be able to meet those or hit those higher speeds as they continue to improve their network and swap out equipment. Homeworks Tri-County is a pretty interesting ISP. They're actually an electrical utility co-op. So their business is actually to serve electricity to people, but they also offer fiber to people that are members of their co-op. So their approach is to prioritize building fiber out to their co-op members first. And then after that, they're going to start looking at non-member areas where it makes sense economically for them to do that. They were somewhat interested in applying for Robin funds in Gratiot to serve rural areas in Gratiot County. But what they're not really interested in is spending the time or the resources on building the application or fighting application challenge claims in our area because they don't really have any co-op members in our area. So they don't want to use co-op resources to go through this process. So what they want to do is, or what they expect is for Gratiot County or another local municipality to pay for a consultant or an attorney to actually build out the application for them and put the project together for them and kind of hand them the application ready to go. And then they would submit it to the state of Michigan. We did have our broadband project advisor put together kind of a proposed project area, and that proposed project would serve about 1,400 new locations in Alba, Washington, and Hamilton townships. But that putting that application together comes at a cost, and our project advisor has estimated that it would cost about $20,000 to do the project consultation work, to work with Homeworks to kind of build this project out and submit the application to the state of Michigan. There's risk involved with this. You know, if the county decided to pursue this and have our advisor do this work, it's still possible that the application wouldn't be, or sorry, the funds wouldn't be awarded to Homeworks. So that's kind of a risk that's associated with that. It's just, like I said, the Homeworks isn't interested in that risk, so they want to push that risk to somebody else, like the county or a municipality. Frontier is another potential. They did reach out to us at one point to express some interest in the county. They are mostly focused on copper telephone lines right now, but they're rapidly building out fiber in a lot of areas across the state. I met with them briefly, but after they took a look at the FCC maps and they heard that the county has basically utilized or earmarked all of its ARPA funds for other projects, they became significantly less interested in looking at Gratiot County through the Robin funding. Wideband Group, the project advisor, they reached out to CMS to discuss how they're going to be expanding in Gratiot County or whether they would be interested in applying for Robin funds. They did set a meeting, but they didn't keep that meeting. So we're kind of taking that as that they are no longer interested in applying for funds in this area. And then I was also asked to reach out to Chapton Telephone Company. They're mostly a telephone provider. They do some internet service providing in a few areas. And they do have a small amount of fiber kind of adjacent to the county. But they told me directly that they don't plan on expanding in Gratiot County. So that's kind of where we are with looking at Robin funding, is that most of the ISPs have told us that they aren't interested in applying for that specific funding here in the county, with the exception of Homeworks, who is somewhat interested but doesn't want to actually put the project together or put the time into it. But if somebody handed them a project, they would be interested. So next I wanted to talk about the BEAD program. This is another kind of funding set, but this one is a federal program. And the way that they decide who's served or unserved is actually different than the way that the Robin program is deciding that. So this map is a map of Gratiot County, and the gray areas on this map are areas that would be eligible for funding, this type of funding in Gratiot County. But this is kind of a snapshot in time. As ISPs kind of build out networks on their own, this map may change over time, or the ISPs could submit different data sets into this FCC map or portal, and it could make more areas either eligible or ineligible for BEAD funding, depending on what type of data they submit to the FCC. The details of this program haven't really been announced yet. They're going to release more details as this year goes on, and applications for this project or funding won't go live until next year sometime. So what have we done so far? The work group and we've been encouraging citizens to continue to challenge those FCC maps in anticipation of BEAD funding. Challenging the FCC maps isn't really going to help us out for Robin funding at this point, because the ISPs aren't really interested, and B, the challenge, when the data sets get updated on the FCC, it only happens twice a year, and that would actually happen after the Robin program is already awarded its funding. We've been discussing our concerns with ISPs to make sure that they're submitting their mapping data correctly to the FCC. And because we want those maps to really accurately portray broadband as it exists in the county. So we've been working with ISPs on that. And then we've been encouraging ISPs to actually apply for this funding and educate them on how the maps for Gratiot County are inaccurate. But we haven't seen much interest, even letting them know that they could still apply for funds, even though the maps are showing that our areas are mostly ineligible. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this to the board tonight is I wanted to update everybody on it, but I also wanted to look for some guidance to see what the board is which direction you're interested in taking this. I wasn't sure if you were interested in pursuing the project that Wideband is kind of put together tentatively to work with Homeworks. Like I said, they estimated that putting that project together and actually applying for the funds would cost about $20,000 and would serve about 1,400 people on the east side of the county. So that's kind of one option that I wanted to gauge the board's level of interest on. Yeah, I still seem to be having some audio issues, so I'm just gonna pop down to the boardroom now to go over to kind of go over the rest of this, because I unfortunately can't really understand the discussion that's being had down there. So let me pop down there really quick.
Some of our streetlights are. Streetlights are. Amazing.
I'll see. I think we can. Yes. We're starting. Around it and they got
For November of 2020, I think it was Labor Day weekend. Chris was downstairs over the weekend. He was downstairs getting your budget ready. And I was upstairs this was on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I believe, that we were all in the office working. So just so you know, it's not just on regular weekdays. So
I'd like to say that I don't think people realize that a lot of times I'm called to see if she'd like to go shopping up in Mount Pleasant. And she's working at one of the townships, doing something to do with voting.
yeah, yeah.
And during our voting this last year, I know that she went to all the townships to retrain and to retrain again, answer questions and retrain again. And wow, I mean, you don't spend much time at home.
We have to make sure that our election inspectors are trained every 2 years. It's only good for a 2-year cycle. So as you can imagine, they were all trained for the 2022 election. So when 2024 comes up, but of course, the majority of them aren't going to be working an election, so they can lose. There's so much for them to even know to run the election. So they lose it.
But in the past, so you guys will know, in the past, the clerk used to have everybody come. She'd have 2 days and they would come into the commissioner's room and she would go through everything with them. They had any questions, they had to get a hold of the Secretary of State. And Angie will vouch for that. And she would do 2 different lessons. And that was it. And the rest of it, and then what happened during the election night, it would go on till 3, 4, or 5 o'clock in the morning because there would be so many problems.
Too.
So but back then it was even worse because they would have problems and somebody would have to run out there. And I mean, it was, nobody ever knew these things. The only reason I knew it was because I've been here a long time. Been through 3 clerks. So it's a lot of work, the things that you do. And I appreciate all that you do. And keeping everything.
What are receipts?
So we take in money for our court fines, that's birth records, death records, then CPLs are a different fine. This is front of the court fees that we've collected for them. But usually all the general fund, that's for your birth records. So when you're talking about, it's $26 for a death certificate or birth
To
certificate.
get married is.
It's $20 for the license, and then if you need a certified copy, it's 26, so it's actually 46.
Right, you better get up here and get that.
46.
Better get up here and get that or you won't be legal.
No.
So it costs $46?
If you need a certified copy, and if
You can pay half.
you change, you're gonna.
You can pay half, Tim. You don't have to pay it all.
So
I can.
my office would take money in, so we deposit every day with the treasurer.
If you don't have it, I'll loan it to you. No problem.
Take it. Take it.
Well, on the clerk side, I guess I want to talk about it, mention it, I guess, just from my business standpoint. I deal with every clerk in the county, every clerk in the state. And during the pandemic and everything, this clerk's office has always been the easiest to deal with forever. It was 40 years. So this is probably it's run well before, it runs well now, and they take care of people that are doing business with them. And when we switched over to the medical examiner stuff and they started billing for all of that, something new. They had one hiccup in a month and it runs like clockwork. And so this clerk's office is outstanding.
The people are well served by our county clerk.
Thank you.
One of the other things I wanted to ask too, of all of the things that you do, the only thing that's really confidential in your department is just the courts, or is that also?
No, so your CPLs are not public knowledge. Birth records are not public. So you can't walk in and get information or anybody else's birth certificate except for your own. So there's a lot of confidential in my office.
But most people, nobody would get that anyway.
I'll be surprised. People want to steal identity.
Oh, yeah, no,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
People want to steal identity. They'll figure out any which way they can to figure out a social security number or whatever.
Yeah.
It's got to be closely guarded. Yeah.
Anything else for Angie?
Have you heard from the state at all on how these new elections are going to run?
I have conference on the 16th of February, so we'll find out how we're gonna have to.
Because you
We
have a May election coming up, so,
don't have, so it's only for federal and state.
okay, not long.
Until people start to get used to that 9-day,
Okay,
so I expect
so we got a little time here.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Oh, we'll start on these elections in the spring,
No, these are locals.
Right.
but it'll spread down to them after the federal.
Most likely, I would think that once people get used to it, they're gonna say, we're gonna do it for.
So you
all
think
of them.
our first round will be the federal election?
I think our first round will be in February of 2024,
Yeah.
which will be the presidential.
And
Right.
you're saying everybody will just start coming to the courthouse to do it?
I don't know how that's gonna look because I don't think that some of the townships want to give up that responsibility as far as to make that happen. But when you're putting 9 days, the majority of our clerks, our local clerks have jobs outside of this, the township clerk job is considered a part-time job. So if they have to take off 9 days because you have to allow them to register and then vote. So you have to have a clerk there that can register, look up on the state system to find out where they're coming from and move them in. I don't see how a person that has a full-time job In 2024, you have to have 9 days in February, you have to have 9 days in August, and then you have to have 9 days in November. I don't know how they're gonna do it. They're gonna have to have really strong deputies, so. We'll see.
Unless if they don't have a job, they're about 80 years old.
Well,
They can't go 9 days.
I have that. I don't know about that,
What
but
about the cost of it?
it's gonna fall on them.
The townships will pay.
They're gonna have to pay. They're gonna have to put it in their budget because they've got to hire their election inspectors too.
Wow.
Here in Michigan has fifth earliest primary.
Because they just passed that.
And
Yep.
South Carolina has early
Well,
February.
that's presidential primary. That's
That's in
a
February.
year away.
The governor just signed that into,
So that involves both parties have the primary.
at the same time, yes, they were looking at the first bill that was introduced where they were gonna have the Democrats in February and then the beginning of March, the Republican. And so then that would have been 18.
Two elections, double the cost
And then I don't know how you're going to do,
and double the 9 days.
so with the proposal of 22-2, I don't know if you realize too, on your absentee, your permanent absentee application, you can check it now so that you don't have to fill out an application in every election. So you will just automatically get a ballot. So that's coming down the line too.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? I guess probably as we all have a note here that the prosecuting attorney after March 31, they've appointed Laura Beaver to be replacing Keith. It says in here that she intends to run 4 years. So congrats to her. Anything else?
The airport.
We're gonna talk about the letter.
The airport, couple things. Before Tracy left for vacation, we had left at the last meeting, we had left it that we were gonna put a letter together and approve it kind of tonight. We sent it out early basically because we figured that we approve it tonight, it'll be in the newspaper tomorrow, and they haven't got the mail yet. You know, so their first reading of it. But they did send a letter probably about 10 days ago to them that we all took a look at. This letter here was mailed to us. Angie got it on Friday. And but I had seen it. They have an airport authority meeting tomorrow morning. We're gonna have just a regular meeting. It was in that packet. So that's why I sent it out to you guys to make sure you've seen it. Basically, what our letter said was we really wanted to know by the end of the month what was gonna happen. And if we didn't hear any response, we just took it as that we would figure they wanted to take it over, we would move in that direction. This letter here talks about there's something here I don't understand. They talked about a little bit of we're going to have maybe switching to some property or, leasing it. There was some talk about leasing it. Maybe that's in the agenda, leasing it to us, tomorrow for 99 years, and then have some deed restrictions in it and stuff like that. And it's like still kind of cobbled up, for somebody down the road, 5 generations down or whatever. So we'll see more about it tomorrow, but this is the letter that they sent us. And
At least they made some movement. They wrote a letter.
yeah, they wrote a letter. They'd like to meet. I don't know what you think about meeting with their commission. I don't know where it would go from there. I think we've probably somewhat taken the position, either we want to do it or let them do it. Just one of us needs.
I don't, in my belief, I don't see any reason to change our position.
Well, we have been apparently in business with them and some other townships for a number of years, but losing 50, 60 grand a year. It's just not going well. And there's still a couple $100,000, I think, left in the account, the last I'd seen.
There was last time, I don't know if have you looked at all lately, Chris? No.
Well, they made a decision not to take any last year from anybody because they had this 200, they had about 280 or something like that. I think it was, wasn't it, Chris? And I think they've kind of whittled that down to maybe 220 or something. I'm not sure what the number is.
Have we sent them any money?
We didn't say, I believe.
Huh? I thought we, about 3 years ago, we approved to send them 26,000, but we never sent it.
Oh, 3 years ago, we have,
But since then, we voted not to give them any money.
Yeah.
and then they said last year they didn't want anybody from anybody.
Last year, they didn't even bill us for anything.
Last year, they bill us twice a year, $13,000 each. They sent us a bill, the first bill, and we paid it. And then we started having these discussions with them and they did not send us the second bill. We did not budget any for this year, but that does not mean that something can't change.
And apparently, my understanding is a lot of the townships haven't paid a number of time, and Ithaca hasn't.
It hasn't paid in years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're
No,
on
Pine River hasn't paid.
the year, Pine River hasn't, I know, like.
Pine River, it's been about 3 years for Pine River.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Arcata hasn't paid.
Got three about, they all stopped because they felt it was a, they were.
Double tax.
Double paying, yeah,
Double tax.
yeah, they were double paying.
Well, yeah, well, that's another side of the coin.
Well, we're at an authority meeting tomorrow. I guess the real question is gonna be is, are we interested in meeting with their board, you know, and I'll send a note out after the meeting tomorrow to everybody and we can figure out if we want to meet with their board. I don't know what we would accomplish by that, but
Well,
It'd be nice to
we
know.
can always pay to listen to somebody, but at the same time, I'm not willing to move off our position at this time.
well, and I think it's in the meeting minutes of the thing, they talk about deed restrictions. So I really think in their mind, they think we got a good deal going and we can't build a casino there, you know, they're just not.
And their land is surrounded by authority land and county land.
Right.
They don't have any real. It's just,
Well, we all got a hodgepodge. We all got a little patch of it,
just look up on the GIS and read it, and it's all there. You can see it.
but
Just, it's, well, I'm getting
I'm
tired.
not gonna fix it here tonight, but that's kind of where we're at with it. And you know, we can talk more about it here in a couple of weeks, but I'll send you a note out on the highlights of what's going on tomorrow. I'll send it.
Good. Good. All right.
Can I understand though, that basically they want to keep it, but we don't want to give them any money? Is that how we're looking at this?
We would turn it over to them to operate it, and we would turn it all, we would deed our property, we have. You've seen those maps, we have 7 or 8 pieces out there, parcels, we would just deed that to them, they would own it all. They would have it all, they would manage it. You know, they would take care of everything.
Right.
And then vice versa, if they wanted to do that, we had talked about. The commissioners would be the airport authority, we would point some outside, just like the VA, the veterans and stuff like that. We'd get some people to fly airplanes and do some of that stuff in there and have a subcommittee of it and operate it that way.
Is there any reason why we can't both on this?
We've been doing it for a number of years apparently.
We've been in for over 20 years. It hasn't worked. The airport is not being run well.
Well, it's not a lot of money.
Oh, it is money, a lot of money when you only got 200,000 and left. So that's about 4 or 5 years. And then what do you do? Who's gonna pay the couple 100,000 to take the operate it, you know? I mean, it takes operational money and we're only losing 60,000 a year. I mean, it was like 300 to run it, wasn't it? I don't have the numbers to run the whole thing, I mean. Per year. They take in money and put out money. I think it was a couple $100,000 day. Yeah.
They get other funding sources, so
Yeah.
not all just.
See what you're meeting, how it turns out.
Yeah, I'll send a note on it.
Yeah.
Chris is gonna go with us tomorrow. He was involved when we were meeting with airport people and stuff like that. So I had asked Chris to go up there tomorrow. Well, we're just going to Ithaca here in the city council. Anything else? Anything else on the agenda for anybody? Questions? Richard?
Yeah, you got a comment?
Public comment, yes.
You know,
Mark that. Any public comment? Any
public comment.